What's up gamers, DreamcastGuy here, reviewing today Yakuza Kiwami 2. Up until recently, I think that most people would consider this series rather obscure. It certainly has its own diehard fan base, and they're extremely fun to play, but in general, they're not flying off store shelves. And I think part of the reason for that is the fact that there's just so many games. I mean, where do you even start in the Yakuza franchise? Well, Sega has heard that complaint and started going back and doing full remakes of the earlier entries. And that's what this is. What you're looking at is a total redo of the second Yakuza game, and I just want to say up front, this is now my favorite Yakuza ever. It manages to transform the combat system, introduce us to an all-new city, and do so many big changes that have forever changed how I think about this franchise. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about what this game is about. Our story begins with our hero trying to put his clan back together. They're virtually on the edge of collapse. And suddenly, when it seems like things can't get any worse, their standing leader is randomly executed by an assassin. So what does he do now? Kazuma needs to go on an adventure to try and find a new leader before they're completely wiped out in an all-out civil war. Doing this, though, is going to be a very messy thing because the people who want them eliminated are some very dangerous people. Right up front, I want to say that these are truly some of the most evil villains that have ever existed in this entire universe. Some of the scenes have so much tension in them, I was afraid to set down my controller to even watch them. Like at one point, I snuck into this VIP club to try and eavesdrop on an enemy leader to try and figure out what their upcoming plans were, when suddenly I heard this boss arguing with one of his minions. This underling had apparently said something that offended him, so he decided to just toast his success. He asked the guy to raise his glass, and the leader suddenly starts pouring this like $10,000 bottle of whiskey into his cup, and he fills it up and up and up until there's literally just booze running down his hands. But this underling is so scared he refuses to move. He's like a statue until eventually this boss smashes the bottle over his head, just splitting him open. This tension is so heavy, the cutscene is terrifying, and it really instills the fact that for the first time, Kazuma might be in a situation that even he cannot survive, and that's why I love it. But part of the reason this series is so popular is because along with these moments of real heavy seriousness, there's also absolute wackiness. So let's talk about some random side quests, because this is really some of the most interesting and hilarious moments of the entire game. In this, we now have access to not one city, but two. They're separate towns, one more central Japan that's a giant red light district, and a second one that's completely brand new to this called Kansai, which is a little bit more of a quiet coastal area and is really awesome. Both of these are fantastic and really provide some different side quests and really memorable moments. Let me just show you one of them so you get a feel for what's going on. So one night I'm walking down the street and I'm just trying to find like a place to eat or maybe a cool club to hang out at, when suddenly these dudes walked out of a back alley and started trying to confront me, saying that if I didn't pay them, I wasn't allowed to walk past them. Well, I'm the great Kazuma. I'm not going to put up with that. So I use my master martial arts skills to pound them into the pavement. But instead of this being the end of it, suddenly this dude walks out of the alley with them and says, "Oh, I'm sorry. These are my people. This is actually just my own little troop. We're upcoming Yakuza. Let me make it up to you. These guys were being so disrespectful. Let me actually take you out to a club and try and say my own apologies." So I decided to follow them and see what's up. I figured maybe we'd go do some karaoke or maybe just go hang out with some beautiful women. And instead, they took me to a special bar that features the ability to dress up as a giant baby and be pampered. Yes, I'm not making this up. They're dressed as giant babies, and these are murderous Yakuza. Well, my dude got really offended that they'd even drag him here and says, "Look guys, I don't want to be involved with this," which ended up pissing them off. So they jump up and decide to try and fight me while dressed as giant infants. I had to pound a bunch of dudes wearing diapers. And maybe that's not a good way to phrase that, But look, that's what's really happening. So then when I left that place, I just wanted to go out into the streets and just try and clear my head. And here's where I noticed that this is built on the Yakuza 6 engine, my very favorite of all of them, which basically makes it where you can wander into almost any building and go anywhere you want with no load screens. Do you want to try and grab a bite to eat? You can. Do you want to get completely drunk or wander into an arcade and sit down at a random cabinet and play something like Virtualon? You can. Anything and everything is completely accessible in both of these cities, which leads to so many just bizarre moments of absolute epicness. Perhaps the thing that is the smallest change in this game, but I think something that managed to do the biggest fundamental difference in just general feeling, is the combat. Obviously, you are going to be getting into tons of big skirmishes and trying to fight people here and there, and I think that now, the way they have Kazuma control is finally 100% perfect. Now, clearly, you're somebody who's very well trained in how to defend yourself, but they've done something very different here, which is that it seems like all the combos have been slightly tweaked. There is now a new level of fluidness that lets you try and pick how you want to fight a lot more directly. And basically, as you level up and get experience points, you can customize your combos and choose how you want to encounter every situation. But on top of that, they have now introduced a completely new equip system. Previously, in other Yakuza games, you could use items, but when you picked something up, it only existed for that single fight. You could pick up something to smash somebody in the face like a bike, but now you can actually put stuff in an inventory. Like if you find a pocket knife or a sword, you can take it and put it in your inventory. That way later on you can use it in a harder situation. Like here, I ended up getting surrounded by like 15 dudes in a very small room, but thankfully I ended up saving a police baton I'd found earlier and storing it in my inventory, so now I could bust it out and start doing special attacks to take them down one by one and make it where this would be a little bit more of a level playing field, despite the fact that they so dramatically outnumber me. For all the good stuff though, I do think that there are two things they've added to this game that I really didn't care for, and I kind of wish that they just added more side quests instead of them. There are now two big mini games that are totally optional, but still really not for me. In one of them, you can now be a manager of a cabaret, which is, like a ladies' nightclub where gentlemen come in and they talk to these pretty girls and they basically tip them. So it's a weird mini game where you basically try and cycle in the customers, your clientele, and then try and set the right girl for the right job there, and then do stuff like walk up and give them a bottle of wine or compliment your guest. And all of this is basically to try and survive that shift and make the most amount of money possible. It's just a weird mini game that it doesn't really fit. It just feels so far out there, and honestly, it's just not fun. It feels like an electronic way of doing a basic chore, and maybe it's just the fact that I was a waiter in real life, but it's not really entertaining. And that's how I unfortunately felt about the other big minigame, which is sort of like a tower defense mode. Basically, one of the people you end up making friends with to try and strengthen your clan has a evil construction company. It's basically a bunch of hardcore psychopaths who do construction at day and crazy fights at night. And you need to try and help defend their equipment against other Yakuza who are trying to take over their territory. So really what you end up doing here is commanding little units of people to try and move in and fight off these very weak people by the hundreds. And you basically spend money to try and strengthen your units and fight off these people until every single guy is gone and you win the round. And I just don't really understand why they put these modes in here. They are different, and I give them respect for trying to be interesting, but they just don't really fit the rest of the tone. I had so much fun with the new fighting and just getting to go into random buildings and find new quests and do all the eccentric stuff I could possibly imagine, that suddenly stopping to do these much more stilted, held back minigames, it feels like it wasn't a great fit. Overall though, despite these weird distractions, this is easily the best Yakuza yet, and one that I'm certainly going to be putting hundreds of hours into. Okay, so we've heard a little bit of bad and a ton of good, but let's go over to the ratings board and put a big number on it. I am giving Yakuza Kiwami 2 a 9.5 out of 10. I want to end this video with a little bit of a controversial opinion and something I feel like people in the Yakuza community don't agree with me on, but I just want to say you should really start trying these games out. But really, don't worry about where you start. Any of them are exceedingly good, and even if they don't exactly make sense with the general storyline, I still think that any of them in a bubble is fantastic to try out. There's definitely going to be side quests that make you laugh, fights that make you grip your controller so tight you think you're about to pop off a button, and big moments that you have to see to believe. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Oh, hey, I was just playing a little bit of Grand Theft Auto on my Darth Vader PSP. Are you curious what I'm going to come out with next? Well, if you click this button, you'll be subscribed to be the first to know. Also, if you click over here and here, you can see my latest review and my latest top 10. I promise, it was super good. Or it was really bad and I'm sure you can just make fun of me in the comments. Either way, it'll be a lot of fun. Thanks so much for watching.